Hi, this is Tony Julian Design with another tutorial on InDesign. Today we're going to talk a little bit about bringing elements to the front or to the back and adding colors using CMYK as well as Pantone and placing a layer and placing elements on top of a layer and then finally making a PDF. So first thing we'll do is after we create our InDesign document, we have to go to our preferences and we'll change our preferences to inches. Say OK. Our document is 8.5 by 11, so I'm going to go ahead and save that. I'm just going to save it on my desktop, which is over here. InDesign. Name it 3. So remember how to create boxes. We can simply click and drag a box of any size, and I'll put a line around that box by going to the swatches panel and clicking on the line element and then clicking, I'll just make it a black line, and I'll make it a magenta fill by clicking in the middle and clicking magenta. It's important that you click the tabs for the fill and for the stroke. So I'm going to then copy that image. I also have an extra box here, get rid of that. So I will copy this box by holding on the shift key and the option key and dragging to create a second box and do the same thing for the third box. I'm going to make this last box cyan. I'll make the middle box, just make that green. So if I were to place the elements on top of each other, you will see that the blue is in front, the cyan, the green's in the middle, and the magenta is at the back. So if I want to put the blue all the way to the back, I can go to Object, Arrange, and Send to Back, and the blue will go all the way to the back. If I want to put so right now the magenta is in the middle, and I can do the same. I can go to Arrange, I can bring that to front, so the magenta is now in the front. If I want to just move elements, instead of moving it all the way to the back, I want to just move it to the middle, so I want to put the magenta right between the green and the cyan. I can then select Object, Arrange, Send Backward. Send Backward just puts it one element back and not all the way to the back. Similarly, if I want to put the cyan in the middle and not all the way to the front, I can use Object, Arrange, Bring Forward, and it just puts it right in the middle. So that's the way you can move elements around by using the Object menu, Arrange, to move elements to the front or to the back. And that's very useful in design. So the next thing we'll talk about is adding colors. So by default, my panel has these CMYK colors, and that stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. So all these colors are made up of different color combinations. But if you want to change one of these color combinations, you can simply double click on the color and you can move these sliders, and you will see that it's the name of the swatch name is here, and it's a process. So either you're printing in process or spot color. So its process is a combination of cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, and I can move these sliders. If you put your preview on, you'll see the color changing in the background as I move it around. So if you know an exact CMYK combination, you can type that in and you will get the exact color. In printing, all CMYKs are not exactly the same based on paper types and different things like that. But for the most part, for this tutorial, if somebody can give you the CMYK color combination, you can type it in. It will look pretty close to whatever that combination is. So here I can move it around and I can say OK, and that color now saves into the swatches panel, and I can use it somewhere else. So if I wanted to make a circle or some other object, I can then select that color that's been saved in the swatches panel. I could also create a new color swatch by going to this little arrow on the swatches and selecting new color swatch, and I can create my own from here. If I know the colors I want, I can type the numbers in, then click Add, If you want to name this something, you could take the checkbox off, and just call it new green, and hit add. The only thing with that is, and hit done, is that you don't see the color combinations right away. You have to double click on it to see where the color combinations are. So if that's not an issue, you can certainly name these colors anything that you want just by double clicking on it, taking off the check, and then naming it whatever you want. So that's CMYK. Now, the other color mode is called Pantone color. So Pantones are generally used if you're going to do logos and if you're going to use business cards. You tend to use a Pantone color, which is a flat color, and it's not made up of multiple colors like cyan, magenta, yellow, and black are. So if you want to use a Pantone color, you can go to New Color Swatch, and you can then choose, instead of Process, you can choose Spot. When you choose a spot color, you have to use the pull-down menu to choose a color mode. So there are many different types of color modes. The one I will focus on is Pantone solid, coded or uncoded. So these are just a lot of different color modes. For the most part, many people use the Pantone color, and there are actually color books that you can look at to see an exact color. It's almost like going to Home Depot and looking at paint swatches. So if you choose Pantone solid coded, what you would have is a list that comes up of uncoded or coded. If I use uncoded, if I use coded, you will see the C at the end. If I use uncoded, you will see a U at the end. So if you knew the exact color, so a lot of the times a company would have a color swatch that's associated with a particular logo or brand, and that's the color that you have to use. So if it's Pantone 176 U, then that means you type in 176 U, and that's that color. If it's 236 U, whatever the color is, and you can certainly select them from this menu here, and then hit add, and by default it gives you the Pantone color. So you can select any one of these colors and choose the Pantone color by going down here and selecting. The main thing to remember if you're using Pantones is you don't want to use Pantones and CMYK at the same time, because you're adding colors. So when you're printing a job, you have CMYK, that's 4 colors. If you had a Pantone color, then you would have 5 colors, and you would have to pay more for a 5-color job than a 4-color job. So you can certainly select a Pantone and then change that Pantone into a CMYK color by simply going to CMYK. It'll give you the CMYK colors, and then you would change it to Process. And for the most part, it would not be exact. It'll still say Pantone on here, but if you click on it, you'll see it says Process. Process means CMYK, and you can certainly change that name if you want. And notice it gives you sort of percentages inside of the numbers. It'll still print fine, and it'll get something very close to the Pantone, but it would not be exact. It would not be the exact Pantone color, because Pantone colors are a different print than the CMYK colors. So you will select that and say OK, and then you will have a Pantone color. In this case, we already changed it to CMYK, and if you mouse over it, you can see the different color combinations. The last thing I wanted to show you was layers. So right now we have everything on one layer in InDesign, and the layers panel over here, palette, if you click on it, you see it's one layer. So everything is on one layer. Sometimes you may want to put things on different layers. So if you click on this little icon, it'll create a new layer for you, and then you can move elements onto that layer. Notice when I click on it, layer 1 is selected. Let's say I want to move something onto layer 2. I can simply click that object and go to File, Edit, Cut, click on layer 2, and go to Edit, Paste in Place. Notice this red line around your layer, because this red line corresponds to this red here. On this one, it's a cyan light blue color. So if you click on these by default, so if you click on the layer, you can change the color to anything that you want. So if you want it to be orange, now everything on layer 1 will have an orange highlight whenever you click on it, just so you know what's on what layer. You can move things. So by default, if I put this color, I'll change it so yellow, it's in front of the blue. So certainly you have, so when you have this yellow that's on layer 2, by default the top layer shows on top. So if you were to move these layers, and by dragging a layer and selecting it and putting it below layer 1, automatically your yellow goes under the blue. Okay, so instead of going, object, arrange, you can put things on layers and also make them go to the front or the back. You can also lock a layer, so in other words, you won't have access to that layer, you won't be able to move anything by clicking on this little icon, this toggle right here, which locks it, which means I can't move the yellow layer. I can move the blue layer or the elements on the blue layer because they are not locked. And sometimes you want to keep something in place. It may be like a header or a footer or a logo of some sort. And it has to be in that place right here, and it can't move. And you want to lock it and move everything else around it. So layers are really good. It's a really good use of a layer. Also, when you're tracing objects, you don't really do a lot of tracing. Maybe in InDesign, you may do it in Illustrator. But the Illustrator layers work very similarly. So you can certainly use one element at the bottom, and let's say you want to trace something over, you can use the pen tool to try to trace. You really wouldn't trace a circle per se, but if you want to trace an element and not move the element at the bottom, you can use your pen tool to certainly do that. So that's another good reason for using, and that's the really bad. So then I can fill that. You get the picture. So this element on the top is the magenta element. It's on layer 1. The element on the bottom is layer 2, and that's locked. To move the element, you just unlock it, and you can move it any which way you want. And then you can reorder your layers so your yellow goes on top of the magenta. And finally, we'll save that. And to make a PDF, you go to File, Export, and it'll by default bring up the exact name as your file name. I'll just save it on the desktop. And back to our Adobe different kinds of PDFs that you can make. The PDF X1A is the best for print. If you're sending something on the web, again, you can certainly use a smaller file size. We'll just leave it in high quality print for now. We have one page. We have view PDF after exporting, so we can see it, that it actually pops up on our screen. And then we'll just click export. And then you should have a PDF that pops up from Acrobat. Acrobat is taking a little while to come up. And there you go. So there you have and you can reduce the screen. So you have a PDF file of the project you just made. And that's all for today. So today we talked about adding boxes, adding colors to those boxes using CMYK and Pantone, bringing elements to the front or the back, as well as using layers to bring things to the front or the back and locking that layer. And finally, we made a PDF that we can then share with the rest of the world. Thank you for watching this tutorial, and hope you learned something, and check back for another one pretty soon. Bye.